What's up, guys? Welcome. It's starting to get warmer outside here in Jersey, so we figured we'd do the once over on the bike, get ready for riding. And notice that little drop on the ground here, some fluid. And lo and behold, looks like I got a seal to replace. So what I'm going to do is I'll do that. Replace the front seals on the forks here. It's the 83 GL1100, as I stated. So the first thing I got to do to get to forks is get the wheel off. And with all that Markland chrome and lights and all that other crap, that's always a fun job. But so we're going to go ahead and get all that pulled off, get the caliper covers pulled off, get the fenders pulled off, and then I'll show you how I get the seals replaced in the forks. Alright, let me get all that pulled off and then we'll get back to you. Alright, I got the covers off and the shocks and the Markland lights off the side. I got the calipers up out of the way. Calipers are pretty straightforward. It's just a combination of a couple of 12mm, 14mm bolts. Get the caliper bracket here, get the caliper out of the way, and then just get it up, and I got it tied up there, just hooked up out of the way. I'm going to drop the wheel now. So the two bolts on the bottom here, make sure you take notice when you take those off which way's front on that, so you can put it back on the same way. And then I'm going to drop the wheel down, and then once I get the wheel dropped off, then I'll take off the fenders and the bumper here. Alright, we'll see how that goes. Front wheel pulled off. It's basically pretty simple, just undo the bolts here. What I did is I've got it jacked up in the center, stand. I jacked up the front a little bit, then put some supports under the crash bars on the frame. These two bolts, I think they were 14mm. Loosen these. Before I did that, what I do is put 2 blocks of wood underneath to take up the slot in the wheel, so that the wheel doesn't fall down when you take these bolts off. So once you take these off, you pull these covers off, get them out of the way, and then you can lift up on the wheel and roll it out of the way. It's pretty simple. I got the caliper covers on it, so just taking them off, I got to be careful with these the stops that hold the caliper covers in place on the inside there when they hit the anti-dive. So that's it. Now we're gonna get up here and makes it much easier to get in here, get to these bolts. I've got to get in here and disconnect the other connectors here for these 2 lights on the bumper, and get this wire up out of the way, and then take the 4 bolts out of the fender and pull it up out of the way. So we're going to do that next. Alright, I got the front fender and the front fender guard or bumper, whatever you want to call it, off, lights off, calipers up out of the way. I didn't take off that cross assembly yet between the 2 forks. There's one that to kind of hold the forks in place here while I take the bolt out of the bottom here. So that's the next thing, is should be a 6mm Allen key in here. You got to get that out. Heard different ways to get it out. Guess the best is an impact wrench. They put Loctite on that at the factory, so if it's never been apart before, it might be a little tricky getting it out. So I'm going to use an impact wrench and see if I can get them out of there. And we'll get the fluid drained out, and then get that cross support off. Alright, I got those 2 bolts loosened up. I didn't need an impact wrench, just a regular Allen key, 6mm, was able to loosen them up, so they're draining now. I just wanted to make a couple of quick comments or notes. So I'm not planning on taking the whole fork tubes out. I'm gonna just see if I can do this without taking the forks out of the triple tray up there. Just doesn't make sense to me. If I don't have to take it out, I won't take it out. If I end up taking it out, that's what we do. The other thing is, if you've still got the original air shocks in the front, I've got progressive springs I put in a couple of years ago. So with the progressive springs, I don't run any air. But if you do, you gotta make sure you take the cap off there and bleed the air out of the system before you pull those bolts off. well, you'll get a bath. Alright, so let's let these drain out, and then we're going to go from there. Alright, I got most of the fluid drained out of there, forks there. Once that gets pretty much stops dripping there, just take the fork assembly and lift up on it a couple of times and let it down just to pump out any remaining oil that might be in there. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and take off this cross support now. These little caps in the top here, you just get a little screwdriver underneath them and pry them out. And then there's 4 also 6mm Allen keys in the top there. You can just get in there and get those off, and then take that cross support off. Alright, let's get that off. Alright, I've got the cross support off now. Got it down out of the way. Next thing I'm going to do here is I popped out, just use a little screwdriver to get this dust cap off. Just pry it in between there and then push that up. And then there's a little plastic washer in there, this guy here, and then just get that up out of the way. It might be a little tricky getting it down in there. I actually have these little dental probes, and I was able to just get down in next to it and give it a turn and just lift it up. Once you get that out of there, then you got the C-clip down in there. Let's see if I can get a picture of it there. What you got to do is get a pair of snap ring pliers and then get down in there. Yeah, there's one side of it there. Get the snap rings on it and get that lifted out of there. And there's one side of it, but you get the idea. There's a snap ring in there. So let me get the snap ring pliers out and get that C-clip. Alright, got the C-clips out of there. Got it taped up out of the way. They weren't too bad to get out. I had a little rust on them. What I did was squirted some penetrating oil on the top of them and then just went on the top of it and just tapped it real lightly with a punch just to loosen them up. And then the C-clip pliers was able to get them out. So now, what we're going to do is, in order to get the seal off, all we're going to do is just apply a downward force on the shock itself, on the cylinder itself here, almost like a slide hammer, just up and then slide it down. It's going to probably take a little more effort, but that's basically, I can hear it coming already. There it is. And that's it. So that shock's off. Get the rest of any fluid out there. And that's it. So that's the seal we're going to replace. So let's get this all cleaned up. Get the new seals. Get the other side off. And we'll get let's get this all cleaned up, and then we'll get it back together. Alright, took the other one off. Came off just as easy, just a couple of downward strikes, and that came right off. So I got it cleaned up a little bit here. Now I get a better idea of what I need to replace. Anytime I'm doing it, always replace obviously the bushing and then the dust cover that's up top. C-clips, typically these little plastic washers, they can be replaced. You can probably reuse them, shouldn't be a big deal, but they're cheap. These bushings need to be replaced. This washer's okay. These bushings, these should be shiny. This one's shot. This one's not too bad, but I'm going to replace them both. And then this oil lock, there it goes. Oil lock, it's called. This one stayed on. The other one came off. It's in the bottom of the shock there. I'll get that out of there. This has an O-ring. This oil lock is what it's called. It has an O-ring on it. So I'll order that O-ring just to get that replaced. Then check out, there's a couple other parts when I take it apart. Just check out, the caliper has got some boots on it. But they were on the pins. Both of those are dry rotted. I'll get those replaced. And then by the anti-dive here, where the brake caliper hooks into these, there should be a boot on there. Both of these were dry rotted. I'm going to get those replaced. This pin pivots. It's actually part of the anti-dive system here, the way it works. This pin is supposed to pivot a little bit when you apply the brakes. That pin actually pivots, and that's somehow it's supposed to keep the oil from, when you brake hard, it's supposed to keep the oil from moving too much in the forks, make it a little stiffer, so when you brake hard you don't dive. These bushings pretty easy, just to get a screwdriver, spread that apart a little bit, and then this will pull off, and all this stuff will be able to come off. Alright, so that's it for now. Let me get the parts, get this cleaned up, get the parts ordered, and we'll get it back together. I got the parts I ordered. Basically, I got the two front forks apart now. There's the old parts in the back there. Bushings, seals, then on the outside's the new parts. So top is the bushing and dust cover, and then I'm replacing bushings, both the upper and lower bushings. So the parts there on the right. We've got this is the bushing here. This is the part number if you're looking for it. You can always just go up to the Honda catalog and look it up, part numbers. But anyway, the larger bushings here, and then there's a set of O-rings down here on these stops. These are the two little guys here, so I ordered those. It's these guys, and there's just the brass washers that go on, and that's everything. And then I had some dust covers that were shot. They were over here. They were on the anti-dive mechanism. We'll replace all those dust covers, and bought a front pistons seal and dust seal kit and rebuild the pistons before I got it apart. They're probably alright, but hey, and then when I got it apart, might as well do it. Replace brake pads. Alright, basically that's everything there. So I'm gonna start getting it back together. I also got a part here. It's basically the same. It's a 86 GL1200 front forks off of that. Basically the same parts. I got them right over here. So it's 86, like I said, GL1200. It's basically forks are the same. Did the same thing, pulled them off, got them cleaned up. Got the old ones down there, so I'm going to get those replaced too. Doing my brother's bike while I'm doing mine. He said his had a slight leak, so alright, let's get these put back together. I'm going to get the parts, get it cleaned up here, and then I'll get the parts, put everything together, and we'll put it back together. One more thing I just want to mention, I'll put the link up below, but the parts, if you want to know where I got them from Honda Parts Direct.com. I think there's a dash in there. I'll put a link down below. But I looked around and they were reasonable. It took about a week for them to come, coming from Texas. Alright, so just in case anybody wants to pick around, there's a bunch of websites, so if you just Google Honda Parts, you'll find them. Yeah, I want to show you what these bushings look like. If you're questioning whether or not you need to replace them, here's what mine look like. 30 plus years old. And then that's the new one there on the right, so you could tell obviously need to be replaced. Same with the inside one here. You can see what the inside of that looks like versus the new one. So like I said, for the $10 they are, you know, just order them if you're not sure. If you haven't replaced them, just order them. Alright. Hey, so I'm replacing this boot on this anti-dive caliper bolt thing here. So I picked up the new boots. These C-clips basically just hold these things in on the outside, and then the top of the ring, you know, obviously gets held in on this side. So just put the C-clip on here, put it on the back of this bushing with this seal boot. And then there is no groove in here, so it just, the C-clip basically just holds it in. So get your snap ring pliers. They're pretty small. I think if you don't have any, you can get them from like Harbor Freight to like $14. Change out the points on them. Anyway, just drop that down in there, get the bushing in, and then release the C-clip. And we'll just use screwdriver, just make sure you push it down, make sure it's, because there's no, like I said, there's no groove there, just the pressure from the C-clamp is all that holds it in. Alright, and then you just, the rubber part over. And that's it. Alright, so that's all there is to replacing that boot. Alright, pretty simple. There's a total of 2 on each fork, so a total of 4. So we might as well just replace them, I mean, for $5, whatever they are. Alright, that's how we do that. Alright, I'm putting this fork back together here. What I'm going to do is I put in this is that lock stop, they call it, or oil lock piece. It goes down in the bottom. So this guy came out, put a new O-ring on it, and put some, just lubed it up a little bit with some ATF. That's what I'm going to be refilling the forks with. Manual says you can use either the fork oil or ATF. Since I put ATF on the rear shocks when I rebuilt them, I'm just going to use the ATF also in the front. So simple this thing, guys. This guy just goes right down in the middle here. Just be careful you get the O-ring seated in there. And once you get it seated, it'll just slide down. Alright, so we're going to just get a piece of wooden dowel here, and I'm just going to slide this thing right down to the bottom. There it is. Alright, so then that's the bottom there. You can see that down there, but it just went all the way in. You felt the seat at the bottom. Alright, one other thing, if you didn't do so already, when you clean this up, I took a little bit of 1500 paper and just clean these up. If you have any oxidation in here, residue, a little bit of steel wool, or I used 1500 paper. Just get that all cleaned up so you don't have any problem with your new seal. Alright, so let's go ahead and get this mounted on the bike. I just wanted to show you the parts diagram that's in the service manual. I use the service manual, the climbers. This is 75 to 83, GL1000 and 1100. But as you saw on the 86 forks I showed you, it's basically the same. Right in the middle there, you can see the parts diagram up here. This is the parts we'll be dealing with, putting back in. They're marked over here from 12 down. The dust seal sponge is already gone. I still have the plastic washer in there, but it says discard it. So I'm gonna not put that in. But the rest of the parts are there. We're going to start. The part I just put in was this down the bottom here, 26, this oil lock piece. We slid that in the bottom of the tube, but just in case anyone needs to see it, that's what the manual shows. All right, I don't know if anybody else took anything else apart, but if it's useful to you, there it is. All right. Let me get this put on the bike here. So what I do is use a piece of saran wrap, cling wrap, just wrap it around the lower part here. That way when you're sliding on the seals, you're not going to tear them up, do any damage. Just covers up that piece of metal there, sharp pieces, and lets them slide right up. So the first thing I'm going to put on is the dust cover. Just put a little ATF fluid on here just to get that looped up a little bit. I'm just going to slide that right up. Just work it right over that little gap there. Alright, put a little fluid on here so it'll slide right up. Alright, next is the C-clip. And then the new seal. The new seal goes on, there's writing on the seal, it's usually a part number. That writing faces up. Alright, so let's see. You can see it on here. And I can't see shit here. Let's see. That's on there. Yeah, there it is. So there's a little part number here. I don't know if I'm in the camera or not. Let's see. Right in here, you see the part number. So that faces up, and it goes on there. Alright, so that's the part I'm going to slide on first. Again, I'm just going to put a little ATF fluid on here just to give her some lube. And I'm going to slide that up. And again, just work it easy right over that saran wrap. That way you can take that off then. But that just, I've done it. Just works out that way. You don't get the seal stuck on the lip and damage it when you're putting it on. The last thing you want to do is buy yourself a new set of seals and then ruin them, slide them on there. Alright, after the seal goes the backup washer. Alright.
Then you get the two sleeves. Order's pretty simple. It's a large one, and then the small one. Alright, small one slides right up. If you remember, we used a pair of pliers to, or a screwdriver, I'm sorry, to get in there and open it. Putting it on, you just need to spread it around and slide it up. Alright, that's it. Alright, so we got those on. So now what I'm going to do is, since I didn't take the forks all the way off out of the triple tree, I got a piece of PVC pipe that I cut, 1.5 inch PVC, cut it right down the middle. And what I'm going to do is put it right down here, C-clip up top. I'm going to use a couple of clamps, and I'm going to clamp up here. I'm also going to get a piece of electrical tape, and I'm going to wrap the electrical tape around here. And then I'm going to put a set of clamps I have here. That way you can use that as a stop. So when I'm pushing up, I can either then use this as a slide hammer and force the seal down, or with the fork I can force the seal up. If I got this stop up here, I can push right into that, and it's not gonna go up and damage anything. It's not gonna damage the dust seal I have up there. So let me get that put on, and I'll show that to you. I'll get this stuff clamped up here. All right. What I got, I didn't realize you couldn't see up here before, but anyway, everything's on the fork in order. There's the dust seal up top. Here's the electrical tape I put, and then I used 2 hose clamps. The reason I use 2 shorter ones is because then I get the actual bulk of the clamp on each side. So when I slide this piece of PVC up tight against it with the C-clip in there, the C-clip actually adds some support. It actually hits the outsides of these 2 hose clamps, and then I'm able to use this PVC, and that acts as a stop. So if I want to push up on the fork to push these seals in place, this actually works out well because it's a hard stop up there. I'm not going to go up to and bust up the dust cap. So then the piece of, like I said, it's 1.5 inch PVC, was just split, two hose clamps to hold it tight here. The new seal in place, and then backup washer, like I said, and the 2 bushings. So I'm going to go ahead and lube up these a little bit with the bushings, and just put some ATF fluid on here so everything slides together nice. Put some ATF fluid on the outside of the seals and on the inside of the fork, and then we'll drive that thing in. Alright, I've got the fork, got the seals lubed up, got the stop lock in the bottom. I'm ready to put this guy on. I'm just going to slide it back up, same as it came off. Get everything lined up here, make sure everything's free. Alright, and this is just going to slide on up. And like I said, make sure when you cut your PVC, you got flat side of the PVC, you don't need it on an angle, because that ain't going to help you when you try to push the seal in. Mine's on a straight, 2 straight cuts. Like I said, I got the lock washer up top, and then I'm just going to use it like a stop. I've seen, a video where guys, slide it down. It's a lot easier, and I found I've only done this a couple times, but it's a lot easier. Put the stop up here, make sure that's nice and tight, and you're not gonna slide up and hurt anything. Now you can either work it up just like this, like I said, a slide hammer effect until it's seated in there, or hopefully you can see the bottom of this. I just got a piece of wood and then a dead blow. Use a dead blow hammer, and you can work it up from the bottom up too. It's kind of here. It's different little change in sound when you get all the way up. I think that hit the bottom right there. Yeah, let me get the camera over here. I'll show you just what that looks like. That's all the way up in there. All right, hopefully you can see that, but you'll see the seal there. Then you'll see the groove on the side. That's where your C-clip goes. I'll lock that in. So once your seal is down below, and you can get that clip in there, and then you should be far enough in there not to worry about it. All right, so that's what it looks like from the top. You see the seal slid right down, no damage to the seal, and that's it. So now you take the take the PVC off, slide the dust cover down. Alright, and the last thing we've got to do is, now that we've got it, the seal seated, what I do is take the pliers, put the C-clip back in here. This is easier to do at this point before you put this bolt in the bottom, because once you put the bolt in the bottom, it comes up and it sits up as this one is, which is a little bit higher, and you don't have as much room up here to work with your snap ring pliers to get that C-clip in. I believe it's 14 foot-pounds that goes into. Alright, so once you get the C-clip in, slide that all the way up, you'll hear it stop, and then you can get the Allen screw installed. Stand it up here. And like I said, that gets then torqued to 14 foot-pounds. It's a 6mm metric. I don't have a metric on this, but let me just check that. But you get the idea. That's it. So I'll check the torque on that, but now we can go ahead and start the reassembly, get the cross put back on, cross member support. So I'll reassemble from here. Alright, got the cross member back on, got these dust shields pushed down in place. Alright, both sides. Gonna put the fender back on, put on the bumper, and then it's getting the front wheel back on. We still gotta put the fluid in, so I'm gonna pop off the other side, take the caps off where the air fittings are, and I'll add the fluid through there. Alright, so let's get the fender back on there, and then we'll get the brake calipers back on. Alright, I got the fender back on, got the bumper, fender guard, keep calling it bumper, but fender guard. Anyway, got that back on. Got the tire mounted up there. I rebuilt the brake calipers while I had this apart. Just put new seals, brake pads, seals, all rubber, new bushings. You know, when you got it apart, it's just easy to do it. Those seals get gummed up quick on the pistons, so there's dust ring in the seal in there, so it's always a good idea when you get them out just to pop them out, clean them, replace them. I didn't bother putting a video up on that. I did a video on the rear brake caliper a year ago. Just check that one out. It's the same exact thing. You know, mounted them again. I'm gonna get them on and bleed them, but did the brake calipers. So wheels back on. I didn't torque these up yet because I have to put on the chrome fork guards and one of the bolts go under there. But as you see, I had just popped it up, pried it up, lifted up the wheel with a piece of wood, stuck a piece of wood under it just to hold it up, and then bolted it up there. Alright, let's finish up. Alright, got the brake calipers mounted up. So for me, because I've got the caliper covers, I got to put these brackets on, but most of the time you just got the couple of bolts here, and the one in the frame, in the fork frame there. Pretty simple. Mount the caliper back up. You just get torqued to 13 to 17 foot-pounds, and this guy's 20 foot-pounds. So the calipers are on. I got to put the chrome covers on yet, and I got to put the fluid in. I haven't done that yet. I did finish the 86. Got that back together. Basically was done the same way. Seals went on, everything on, no problem. The only difference with the 86 is it's got the air compressor. So up top you don't have access to any air valves like you do on the 83 because it's manual. So that's where I'm planning on putting in fluid. So this was a little trickier. We had to take the plastic off here. Pretty simple. Alright, wanted to grab a flashlight there, but anyway, on the 86, on the 1200, 2 screws in the front there, take off the plastic cover there, pull that out of the way,
And then there was a little metal plate under there with 2 screws. Take that out, and then you can get to the bolts on the fork. So it's kind of a pain in the ass if you're trying to do it by yourself, because I think it's a 22 millimeter bolt, 1/2 inch drive, but you got the spring compression under there. That's where your springs are. So when you're taking that out, it's going to be loaded. So make sure you're holding on it when you take that out. But you take it out, the spring comes out, maybe about 4 inches, and then it's the same thing on this side. So then we took those out, added the fluid, and then put them back on. Definitely easier with 2 people. I've done it by myself before. It's a pain in the ass trying to hold that down and get it turned. When you got somebody helping you out, it's a lot easier. But I used a 1/2 inch drive socket with an extension. We could both push pressure on it while we fed it in, so it worked out pretty good. But that's the 86. It's about the only difference. Mine, like I said, I'm going to add in, we'll get to that, but I'm going to try to add it in through the air fittings on the 83. So on this side, that's where I pulled the air cap off and pulled the valve out when I drained it, relieved the pressure, and then I just disconnected that bolt, little hose that connects up to there, and it's that little end right there connects up. The hose is just right up there on top. Anyway, that was a 14 millimeter. Took that off. So then I'm going to put the fluid in through here. Alright, putting the ATF fluid in the front fork, doing the passenger side first. Got a piece of 3/8 tubing onto the air fitting where the hose connects there. As I showed you, I took it was like a 14 millimeter, took that off. I put a toothpick in the end of that line just to keep, when I do the other side there, just to keep fluid from coming back through. Just be careful you don't break it off, that would suck. Piece of shrink tie wrap around that just to hold that tight, rag. And then I've got the piece of 3/8 hose just going to the bottom of a funnel. And then I've got the funnel just clipped up to the windshield there just to hold it in place. And then the fluid, you got to kind of work the fork a little bit. Let me get this camera set and I'll show you. But really all I'm doing is just got a little piece of wood, block of wood, and just working the fork up and down a little bit, and that fluid will just go down. It's slow, but it'll go. Let me hook this up, put the camera on the stand here and I'll show you. Alright, so I've got the fluid in the funnel there, and like I said, I'm just kind of just working the fork a little bit up and down. And you'll see the fluid working its way down. It's not moving much, it's just moving about a 1/4 inch each time. I'm not putting a lot of pressure on the front wheel. Alright, and that's it. Just kind of work it until you get all the fluid in. 9.8 ounces is what it calls for an 83 front fork. It was 11.66 on the GL1200, and that's after you disassemble it and completely empty it. So you just work it in, and let me do that, and then I'll do the other side. Just basically get the same setup, but I'll show you that. Alright, rest of the fluid is in on the passenger side. It took about 5 minutes, maybe 7, I don't know, something in that range. Just kind of keep working the fork, getting the air out, and then it'll go in. It's slow. I think the other side's going to be a little slower, but we'll see. Alright, set up doing the passenger side, left side, where you look at it. Had to adapt that the fitting where the valve is a little bit smaller diameter on this side than that hose fitting on the other side. I think that's a 3/8 MPT on the other side. This is just an air valve fitting on this side, so I had to just use a smaller piece of hose and then to make a tighter fit, and then adapt it, just put the other 3/8 hose on top of it. So now I'm adding the fluid. It actually is going quicker on this side, but I'm also pouring a little slower. Once you get an airlock in there, you put too much fluid in the funnel, it starts to create an airlock, and then you got to go burp the fork. So if I poured it a little bit slower, it seems to be going a little bit better.
Could also be because we've got air escaping on the other side there. You know, that toothpick I put in that other line is not real tight in there, so you could be letting air out through there too. Whatever the case, it's going in just fine here. So we're going to go ahead and load up the other 9.8 ounces of ATF fluid on the left side, and then we'll finish this. But you get the idea. Same setup, same funnel. Like I said, just had to use a smaller piece of diameter hose down there. Didn't lose a drop on the other side, so that was good. I wasn't sure if I'd have a little bit of leakage through past the pipe threads. Put the tie wrap on there, which you probably don't need, but overkill that's how I roll. So just didn't want to have any fluid dripping around there. All right, so let's get the rest of this added, and we'll finish this up. All right. Got the Schrader valve back in, hose disc back connected on that side, 14 millimeter on the nut, 10 millimeter on the hose to hold it while you tighten that up. Got the all the oils in, put some air in there, put about 50, can't remember, 50, 55 PSI. I'll come back in an hour or so and check it for leaks, make sure I got no leaks, everything looks good. Seals are replaced, fork oil's replaced. Just got to put the fork covers back on, and we're ready to ride. Alright, so I've got the fork cover installed on the left side of the bike. Got to put the caliper cover on yet, but I wanted to just show you the reason I have to leave the fork covers off, because this mounts on the bottom on one of these fork bolts. So that's why I didn't tighten up these earlier. So now we can go ahead and tighten these up now that I've got this cover on. They get torqued to 13 to 18 foot-pounds. Leave the rear one loose first. There'll actually be a gap up here between it. And you tighten up the first one, 13 to 14. I think I got it set 16 foot-pounds. Tighten this up, and then tighten up the second one. And then repeat the same thing for the other side. Caliper cover's on, fork cover's on, everything's bolted up. I'm going to take it out for a ride. Looking forward to getting some riding in. Got any questions? Go ahead and leave them for me. I'll try to answer them best I can. Thanks for watching. Give me a like, give me a subscribe. Appreciate it.